Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, and today I want to tell you about 20 amazing movies you can currently watch on Hulu. So this is my last video from the original Flick Connection studio. The next one will be an epic Netflix list from the brand new Flick Connection studio, but this list is gonna feature 20 sort of hidden gems, and I'm also gonna blast through 10 movies that you've probably seen that I'm just making you aware that they're on Hulu because Hulu has been adding a lot more movies lately. This video is sponsored by CyberGhost VPN, and later in this video I'll tell you how they can help you unlock more movies with your current Hulu and Netflix subscriptions. So my number 20 pick on this list is called Manos. I have posted about this on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at the Darren Van Dam. But Manos came out in 2019 and is one of the more beautiful movies released that year. It's got amazing cinematography. It is an art house film. It's an indie movie about these child soldiers that live out on this mountain. It somehow manages to be sort of this small indie movie with sort of this epic backdrop. I've compared this one to like a cross between Lord of the Flies and Apocalypse Now. If you like those slower burn indie movies, especially ones that feature really stunning visuals and cinematography like Manos, I highly recommend this one. It's got an amazing original score as well, an odd one, but I thought an amazing one. If that's you, definitely check this movie out. If you tend to like more traditional storytelling in your movies, I'll go ahead and tell you, this one is probably not for you. This one's a little bit more experimental than what you're probably used to. But that's why I have it all the way back at 20. Personally, I would rank this one higher.
Thank you all for coming. And for leaving the kids at home.
Help! I think something's been in.
For those of you that love B-level horror movies, Stung is a pretty cool one about these giant wasps or hornets. I can never tell the difference between my stinging insects, but these giant stinging insects that attack this party. It's got some great performances, some great comedic performances, some fun practical effects as well with the monsters and stuff. I thought it all worked together pretty well. It's got kind of a Shaun of the Dead vibe, not nearly as good, neither in terms of quality or the storytelling, but fans of that genre, if you like those funnier, yet still sort of intense horror movies, Stung is a fun one that I know a lot of people missed.
What do you think I'd do? You hurt one hair on his head. I'm taking my nephew with me.
Every single one of these people is gonna tell the tale of how you ran.
They know it's not true.
It doesn't matter what's true. It matters the story they tell when you're gone.
The Kid is a Western about Billy the Kid, sort of a Billy the Kid side story, if you will. It features and was directed by Vincent D'Onofrio. Now, I don't know that directing big movies is really necessarily in his future because I felt like the storytelling got a little bit lost, but if you like Westerns, this one did have a good story. Ethan Hawke plays a really great character as well, and the supporting cast is good. Chris Pratt goes way against type and plays a really good villain in this as well. And while I did think it was a little slow and didn't quite fit together the way that I wanted it to, it's a decent Western, especially for like a little indie release that came out just last year that almost nobody saw.
Thing appeared. Same place, exact same time. But it just made a bunch of weird hand gestures.
Colossal stars Anne Hathaway and a giant monster that's destroying Seoul, South Korea. It also stars Jason Sudeikis in an interesting against type role. That's all I'll say about his character. I liked what they did with him a lot. That's really the reason that this movie makes the list. But Anne Hathaway plays sort of this struggling alcoholic, down on her luck character who just cannot get her life together. Meanwhile, there's this giant Godzilla type monster that keeps appearing and disappearing, destroying sections of Seoul, South Korea, and then she comes to learn, or at least suspect, that she is connected to this monster in this really odd way. It's a dark comedy, but it played out well. I was surprised at how much I liked this one because the concept didn't really interest me that much. As interesting as it seems, I don't know, they didn't sell me on the movie, but it ended up being much better than I had expected.
Multiple reports are now coming in of parents murdering their own children.
Listen to me. We have to get out of the house before Mom and Dad come home. Dad?
Now, one of the crazier ones on this list is Mom and Dad. This stars Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair as a mom and dad. And in this movie, it's kind of like a zombie outbreak, but all of a sudden, all the mothers and fathers, a switch gets flipped and their only motivation is to kill their children. It is dark stuff, but this movie's kind of fun. In a really weird way, there's a scene where Nicolas Cage dismantles a pool table with a sledgehammer. Full Rage Cage weirdness. So if you like full tilt Nicolas Cage, this movie is surprisingly good. Like, I had a really good time. I thought a lot of this stuff was really clever. Another one that was just much better than I had expected. If the concept of this one and Nicolas Cage being full tilt does not interest you, this movie's probably not for you, because that's really the main thing that this has going for it. But like I said, if that is you, this is your movie.
You should sell my pot at your party.
You think I'm just gonna walk into a party and everyone's gonna wanna buy pot from me?
Call me crazy.
Big Time Adolescence is a Hulu original movie that just came out recently starring Pete Davidson. Now, while it does star him, he's sort of in the background. He's a major player, but this really focuses on a teenage boy who's best friends with Pete Davidson's character, who is a guy in his 20s who does a lot of drugs, kind of a dirtbag type of a character, really, and he's got very bad influence on this kid. But the interesting thing about this movie is it's really focusing on their friendship. They have this very close bond, this very special relationship, and the movie's about that. And then in the background, you've got kind of a lot of craziness. This kid ends up getting into a lot of trouble because he's friends with this older guy that he probably should not be associating with. And as kind of dull as that concept sounds, I thought it was ultimately a really good little indie movie that had a lot of heart to it and kind of a good message. I think teenage kids around the age of the main character in this movie should probably watch this movie. It's a good coming of age story that's got some valuable lessons in it.
The Queen's lair. Where is it? Drop it! Now this is something I have never seen. In all my time in the green. A little girl.
Prospect is basically a space western starring Pedro Pascal, who you'll recognize from Narcos, but he's also behind the mask in The Mandalorian, which is another space western. But this one's about some miners on an alien planet, and if you were to kind of strip away the alien landscape and replace it with sort of a western landscape, the guns that they're using are very much, while they're futuristic, they're very much like a musket or something like that. They're kind of roughing it. They don't have a lot to work with. Very much feels like some people are trying to go, get a stash of gold in the Old West, yet it's this weird, like, sort of organic gem that grows inside these kind of gross little pods. So, interesting setting, but a very familiar story. If you dig the way I'm talking about it, you're gonna like this movie. Just keep in mind, it's a very low budget movie. It's fairly slow paced, but I found it to be interesting all the way through, from the very first shot to the very end.
Does that look like your father's handwriting?
Something like grabbing one of these tools and wham! There. Awkward talk with Dad. Over.
The Clovehitch Killer is a murder mystery type movie where Dylan McDermott plays a goofy dad, like a total dad dork, and his teenage son begins to suspect that his father might actually be this notorious Clovehitch Killer who is supposedly responsible for the deaths of a bunch of women. And he keeps digging and trying to find out. So it's got a little bit of a Silence of the Lambs vibe. Again, it is a smaller movie, but it works really well. Dylan McDermott kills it in this. I mean, he's known for a lot of his TV roles. He really kills it in this. There's a couple of moments where he kind of gave me the chills. And then the kid that plays his son does a really good job. This is another one that just kept moving, and I was very interested in it. If you like serial killer themed stories, definitely check this one out before it leaves Hulu, because it has been there for a while and I don't know how long they plan on keeping it.
I'm mad. I'm still mad. It's burned a circuit in my brain.
Another good little indie movie with a big name is Destroyer, starring Nicole Kidman. In this, she plays an undercover cop involved in crimes. She's involved in a heist at one point that plays out pretty well. There's some revenge elements, and Nicole Kidman, as beautiful as that woman is, looks rough in this movie, but it plays out really well. She's got a very, very raw, rough character in this movie, and her look plays out well. The way it's directed, I thought, was really good. This is actually from the same director as The Invitation, which has been on Netflix for a really long time. I highly recommend that movie. So I was super psyched for Destroyer. I don't think it's as successful in its storytelling as The Invitation was, but still, there's just really great little gem that didn't get a big audience back when it came out just last year.
No.
And we'll round out my bottom 10 with Ghost Stories. This is actually an anthology film and one of the better ones I've seen to have come out in recent years anyway. It's multiple horror stories, and these are threaded together much better than any that I have seen. While I do really like horror anthology movies, I always feel like I really like a couple of the stories, I really don't like one or two of them. I liked all of the ones in this movie, and then I especially liked the way that they glued it together. There's a overarching story that got really odd, very cool practical effects, clever practical effects, the kind that don't really take a whole lot of money, but that are so clever that they just play out really well on screen. Little details like that, I loved it. This was just like one of the cooler movies that I saw last year that I had zero expectations for, and you know, here it is right here in the middle of this list that's got some killer picks coming up in the top 10. Before moving on to the top 10, CyberGhost VPN is a VPN service. Like all others, it protects your web browsing, it keeps it private, keeps it secure, but unlike others, it allows you to access Hulu, Netflix, Prime Video, other streaming services in other countries, and there are different movies available in other countries. And I don't just mean foreign movies, I mean big budget American blockbuster movies that, let's say, Netflix couldn't get the rights for here. They maybe have the rights in Germany, and you can just watch it by using your CyberGhost app on a bunch of different devices and picking the server that's optimized for Hulu United Kingdom, Hulu Germany, Netflix Germany, etc. They have a 45-day money-back guarantee, so if you start using it and you find you're not really getting enough value out of it, you can cancel it immediately with no hassle. They have great 24/7 customer support. It works on up to 7 devices simultaneously, and it's devices like Windows, Mac, Android, Linux, Fire Stick, Chrome, and more. And when you use the link in the description below, you can get it for as little as $2.75 a month. So that's more movies for less than $3 a month, depending on which plan you pick. I have been using it for a while. I've gotten a lot more movies out of my existing services because of it, and I know a lot of my viewers have as well, because hundreds of you have signed up just since January, and I've gotten positive feedback from you as well. So if you're interested, check the link out and see if it's for you. But let's go ahead and move on with the top 10 on this list, plus another 10 that I'm gonna blow through that are movies you've probably seen, but you probably didn't know they're even on Hulu right now.
Wait a minute, there it is. Blend it in at a subsonic level, like some kind of mantra. Pain, pain, pain.
The Cooler is a fun Vegas casino movie starring William H. Macy, Alec Baldwin, and Maria Bello. And in this movie, William H. Macy plays what is known as a cooler. If a table in Vegas is hot, somebody's winning a lot, this very unlucky, this guy that's just drenched in bad luck, goes and sits at the table and plays. He's employed by the casino to basically kill the game. He's so unlucky, just by getting close to someone who's winning, it ruins him. Now, this was a practice by casinos. Odds are it probably didn't work at all, but it was a real thing. And then this movie's sort of about the last one, sort of the last casino using these old techniques as all the new stuff is coming into Vegas. You know, Alec Baldwin, while he's not a gangster, he is sort of a leg breaker of a casino owner. Maria Bello has a kind of a sexy role in it as well. And it's just kind of a fun, nice movie. It's got some dark moments. It's got some sad moments, it's got some happy moments, but it's just one of these better little indie movies that actually did pretty well back when it came out. It punched way above its weight, but it's been like 20 years. If you've never seen this one, it's a solid gem hiding out on Hulu.
Okay, so you're using your hair as a mask and trying to rob someone with no weapon. Because the funny thing is, I actually have a weapon.
Booksmart is actually directed by Olivia Wilde. This is her first big movie, and this came out in theaters and it did pretty well, especially for a small movie like this. I do feel like they misrepresented it. They really tried to push this as like a Superbad, like a female-driven Superbad, and it's not really what it is. While there are similarities to be drawn, the way that this one played out and the characters was very different, and I think that's a good thing. It's unique unto itself. I was a little disappointed watching it because I was like, oh, I thought we were getting like something like Superbad. But this one's got a little more heart to it. It's got a little bit more story too. I was kind of impressed with how much they packed into this movie. It is very much a coming of age movie, but it's very raunchy as well. Not as much as Superbad, but close. And the two girls that lead this movie off are very good. They play out very well on screen. And I thought the story was really good. So if you're in the mood for sort of a high school coming of age thing, Booksmart is a fantastic one that just came out last year.
You have killed my grandmother!
Quick, quick, quick! Someone should give her the kiss of life!
You're the man for the job. How's my breath?
Another one from 2019 that got really sadly overlooked is Missing Link. This is a stop motion animation. This one is about the missing link, sort of this ape man and these explorers. The thing I really liked about this one was not only is the animation style beautiful, this is done by the same studio that did Kubo and the Two Strings, which is another just beautiful movie, but I love the explorer aspect to it. It's got this old-timey feel that I personally really love. While this is a family-friendly movie, it's rated PG, for really little kids, there's quite a bit of gunplay. There's some shootouts and stuff, which I thought was fantastic. But don't be surprised if you decide to cue this up with little kids. It could be a little bit intense. There's some really bad guys in this one. But that was another thing that I really liked about it. Sadly overlooked, but hopefully some of you enjoy this one.
One's missing. Who's got it?
The Standoff at Sparrow Creek is a really taut thriller. This is about a group of modern-day militiamen that convene at this lumberyard where they stash all of their weapons right after a mass shooting at a police officer's funeral. Then they find out one of their guns is missing, and then it becomes sort of this interrogation movie where they're all questioning each other and trying to find out who the rat is because they're certain the shooter is among them, and they're trying to out that person before the authorities catch on to their location. It's very intense. It's a little slow paced because it's only a bunch of interrogations, but they're all different and have their own flavor, and just some really fantastic performances out of the leads in this one. It's shot really well. If you want just a good kind of nail-biting thriller that you probably never heard of, this is a fantastic one. I did do a full video review back when it came out. I'll put a link to that in the description though.
They close. What are you doing? I don't want no trouble.
Another one I did an even more in-depth full video review on is The Nightingale. I'll link to that in the description. This is a brutal movie. I'll go ahead and tell you now, it features multiple rape scenes that are fairly graphic, but that is what the movie is about. This takes place in Tasmania, which is just off the coast of Australia, during sort of the British occupation, and I believe it was called the Black War. Again, all those details are in that full video, but it's when the local Aboriginal tribes were at war with the British colonies, and this woman is sort of caught in the middle, and it's really graphic at times, it's brutal, but it's really sort of this amazing, harrowing story as well. This one got a lot of really good press back when it came out. I found it to meander a little bit. That's really my only criticism, is that as the story goes on, you're like, okay, where is this going? But I did think it was a very good film. It's very well produced, well acted. It's got some amazing cinematography as well, but it's ultimately just this harrowing story about this woman just trying to get to safety. Again, I can't warn you enough. There is some very upsetting imagery in this movie, and it goes beyond what I warned you about. So just be aware, we're all under quarantine. If you're not in a mode where you're gonna be able to handle some really heavy stuff like that, steer clear of this one until you're in a better headspace. So with that, I've got a fun one. Now this is a Western that is a ton of fun. Wild action, big action, like Indiana Jones level action in this movie. It is foreign language, but it's well worth it. There's a really cool style to this one. It's called The Good, The Bad, The Weird. You'll probably recognize multiple actors from this because they have made their way into American movies as well. And like I said, just all out fun action. This is a long movie. It's over 2 hours. It's loaded with action sequences and it starts off great. There's a train robbery at the beginning. Some just really stunning visuals that aren't necessarily like realistic. This has got kind of like Kill Bill type action, even though it's not as gory, but just over the top, fun, wild, sort of dazzling action. If that's what you've been looking for, you're gonna be hard pressed to find something better that you probably haven't seen on any streaming service, much less Hulu right now.
I'll never stop running.
Yeah, and I'll never stop chasing you. I'm relentless. I'm like the Terminator.
I'm more like Terminator than you.
I said it first. You're more like Sarah Connor in the first movie too, before she could do chin-ups.
Now, a really fun, another coming-of-age thing that is just one of the best in that genre I've seen ever is The Hunt for the Wilderpeople. This is only a few years old, and this is from the same director as Jojo Rabbit and Thor Ragnarok and What We Do in the Shadows. This was done in between those. It's smaller, but it's about a young boy who runs off into the brush in New Zealand, and his foster father, played by Sam Neill, who's kind of a reluctant foster father, has to go out after him, and they both sort of get trapped out in the bush. So it becomes a survival movie as well, but the kid who leads this movie is so charismatic and funny. It's really, really fantastic stuff. There's language and things, so it's not for the whole family, but it is PG-13, so older kids can watch it. The kid is a bad kid at the beginning of the movie, so he's doing things you don't want your kids doing, just be aware of that. But it is a very kind of heartwarming story and just sort of a fun experience as a movie, which is why I have it ranked so high. I debated on leaving this one off because I feel like a lot of people already know about this movie, but for those of you that don't, The Full Monty is a hilarious movie from England from 1997. It's got an amazing 90s vibe to it, but it's about a group of guys who have lost their jobs and decide that they're gonna do a male strip show to raise money. And most of the movie is sort of leading up to this, all the sort of like hurdles they have to overcome, including like body image stuff, dealing with their wives, dealing with sort of like being looked down upon inside the community, and owing people money and just all sorts of stuff, but it is a ton of fun. And it's one of those comedies that has serious heart to it, as well as a lot of laughs. If you've never seen this one, it's sort of a cult classic. It sort of maybe has been forgotten with time. If you've never seen it and you need to be cheered up, it's a great way to go on Hulu right now. All right, my number 2 pick, and then we'll blast through some really just premium picks that are on Hulu right now before my number 1 pick. My number 2 pick is foreign language, but it is one of the best thrillers I've seen in a long time. It all takes place inside an emergency call center. So just like 911 in the US, a police officer who has sort of been benched in this department takes a phone call and is not sure how to handle it, and it sort of starts to turn into like a kidnapping that he's trying to help solve. It all takes place in this call center and you're hearing him talk to people over the phone. It's kind of like that movie Lock with Tom Hardy, except the stakes are much higher because something very serious is going on and he's having to handle things himself for a couple of reasons that all play out really well. This is a fairly hard way to tell a story, to convey everything from the perspective of one person over the phone, and I thought they did it with expert precision in this movie. If you find that you typically like a lot of my recommendations, you definitely need to watch this one. Do not skip it. All right, and then before my number 1 pick, here's a quick roundup of 10 movies that I absolutely love that are on Hulu right now. It's hard to find them sometimes with the way Hulu's laid out, but these are available at the time of me posting this, so go check them out if you've been wanting to watch them.
You know what? Oh, God. Our little boy is all grown up tonight.
And you know what, big boy? You're grown up. You're grown up. Yeah, I did that.
my number one pick is the movie, the biggest movie last year that no one saw, and that is Parasite. Now, I'm sure a lot of you did see it, but Hulu just added this. It won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, which I do not put a lot of stock in because of how they picked the winners. I've done a full video on that as well, but I do happen to think that Parasite was probably the best movie to have come out in 2019. It's certainly my favorite, and I put that above Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and some of the others that I really enjoyed because it was so unique unto itself. The storytelling is so interesting and so tight, and it's so clever. I've watched this with several different groups of people. I've yet to run into anybody who didn't like this movie and wasn't surprised by it. And that's the big thing with Parasite. It is a surprise of a movie. I heard one person refer to it as a magic trick, and I think that is a perfectly apt way to put this movie. You will not know what's coming, which is why I'm not gonna talk to you about it. I do think a lot of people thought that there was gonna be sort of a gross out movie about parasites or something. It's not, just trust me. This is a solid flick with solid storytelling elements. It's really pretty brilliant the way it plays out, and I think ultimately deserved all the honors that it got in 2019. So if you have not seen it, it's on Hulu right now. I believe that's the only place you can currently watch it where it's included. So be sure to check that out. And if you're overseas and you don't have access to all these, definitely check out that CyberGhost link in the description. But let me know what of these movies you are most looking forward to watching in the comments, and help me thank the Patreon supporters. They've done a great job of supporting the channel. They've allowed me to continue as long as I have in this space, and hope that they continue to support me in the new studio, which you will all get eyes on fairly soon. But I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking this one out, and you will see me on the next one.